Atlanta, we need to talk. Because behind closed doors in Flowery Branch, a decision has already been made that changes everything, and most fans don't even realize it yet. The front office just handed out big money to two players who haven't proven a single thing in the playoffs. And that move? It just lit a fuse. A fuse that means one thing and one thing only. 2026 is playoffs or bust for the Atlanta Falcons. No more excuses, no more wait till next year. The bill is due, and it's due this season. Let's rewind for a second, because this story didn't start with a snap count or a depth chart. It started with a checkbook. Just weeks ago, the Falcons made the call to lock up tight end Kyle Pitts and offensive lineman Matthew Bergeron with big new contracts. On the surface, that looks like a franchise investing in its future. But dig one layer deeper, and it looks a whole lot more like a gamble, a bet the front office made on players who haven't sealed the deal on the field. And here's the twist nobody's talking about. That gamble has quietly erased Atlanta's safety net. Think about it this way. If the Falcons had waited, if they'd let Pitts and Bergeron play out this season, made the playoffs, and then backed up the Brinks truck, nobody would be blinking an eye right now. That's the NFL equivalent of tasting the pudding before you buy the whole batch. Instead, ownership bought the pudding blind. They paid premium price for a promise, not a product. And now, if this season goes sideways, there's no walking it back. Compare that to the two guys on this roster who are truly bulletproof, running back Bijan Robinson and wide receiver Drake London. Those two have already put in the work. Robinson is a top 5 back in the entire league. Full stop, scheme or no scheme. London has proven he can be a difference maker no matter who's throwing him the ball or how the offense is drawn up. They're the modern-day version of Atlanta legends Michael Turner and Roddy White, the backbone that made the Matt Ryan era actually function from 2008 through 2012. Nobody's questioning Bijan or Drake. This isn't about them. It's about Pitts and Bergeron, and whether they can become that same kind of foundation. The hope in Atlanta is that Kyle Pitts finally turns into the second coming of Tony Gonzalez, a generational mismatch weapon who elevates whoever's throwing him passes. And Bergeron, at his best, projects as a steady, dependable piece up front. The kind of player every good offensive line needs. But hope isn't proof. And until these two show it under playoff pressure, in big moments when it matters most, the jury is still out. That verdict needs to come in 2026. On the field. No delays. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for Falcons fans. If Atlanta had held off on paying these guys and still missed the playoffs, at least the front office would have flexibility. They could pivot, move on at tight end, shake things up on the offensive line, reset the roster without the anchor of two massive new contracts weighing them down. But that door is closing fast. Because if this season doesn't deliver a playoff berth, the Falcons are staring down the barrel of running back the exact same core for a 5th straight year and betting everything once again on a new quarterback to be the magic fix. And that's the real nightmare scenario brewing here. Picture this. The Falcons miss the postseason again this year. Fine, they say. Next offseason, we'll swap out the quarterback, keep everybody else, and try again. Sounds familiar? It should. Because that's basically been the plan for the last several years running, and it hasn't worked yet. Different quarterback, same supporting cast, same result. If Atlanta runs that play again in 2027, and it still doesn't work, suddenly this front office is staring down the barrel of the hot seat heading into 2028, desperate, scrambling, making the exact kind of panic moves that got the last regime shown the door. So why does this all matter right now? Because there's a ticking clock buried inside next year's NFL draft that almost nobody's connecting to this conversation. And it could be the most important storyline of the entire Falcons season. Here's the theory. and it's rooted in 9 years of draft history. Quarterback classes in the NFL tend to run in cycles: a deep, loaded year, followed by a down year, followed by a rebound year, and the pattern repeats. Go back to 2018, a stacked class with Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson all going in round 1. Then 2019 crashed hard, a weak class nobody remembers fondly. 2020 rebounded with Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and Jordan Love, a class that's aged beautifully. Then 2021 promised fireworks and fizzled. 2022 might be the worst class in modern memory. 2023 rebounded again. 2024 was loaded. And now, insiders are whispering that 2027 could be one of the deepest, most talent-rich quarterback classes in recent memory. If that holds true, it means something massive for Atlanta. The 2027 draft could be this front office's last realistic shot at landing a true franchise quarterback for years. Because if the cycle keeps repeating, the next great class after that doesn't arrive until 2029, and there is exactly zero guarantee this regime is even still standing by then. To make it that far, they'd almost certainly need at least one playoff appearance in the next 3 years. And if they can't solve the quarterback riddle in that window, the odds of making the playoffs at all start looking pretty grim. Now here's the part that's going to make Falcons fans squirm in their seats. Draft position is basically everything when it comes to landing a top quarterback prospect. Look at the pattern. In stacked quarterback years, the top passers get scooped up fast. Picks 1, 3, 7, and 10 back in 2018. Picks 1, 2, 3, and 11 in 2021. Picks 1, 2, 3, and 8 in 2024. The one outcome fans should dread more than anything? Another 7-9, 8-9 type season that's just good enough to feel promising and just bad enough to change nothing. That's the middle ground purgatory that's kept this franchise spinning its wheels for years. So buckle up, Atlanta, because this season isn't just about wins and losses anymore. It's about a franchise standing at a genuine crossroads with a front office that's already shown its hand by paying big money on faith. Either Kyle Pitts and Matthew Bergeron proved they were worth every penny by helping deliver a playoff berth, or the Falcons need to nosedive hard enough to set up a run at a franchise-changing quarterback in 2027. Anything in between, because there's real breaking roster news out of Falcons training camp, and it's got major implications for the season ahead. First up, Jawaan Taylor is back. Atlanta's presumptive starting right tackle has officially been activated off the physically unable to perform list and is back at practice. The plan is to ramp him up over the next several days, with hopes he's fully entrenched as the starter by the time joint practices with the Colts roll around. That's a big deal, because right now, Taylor is the most proven right tackle on this entire roster. But make no mistake, he's got something to prove. Behind the scenes, there's already chatter that the Falcons could be eyeing a right tackle early in next year's draft. Translation? Taylor needs to go out and show right now in these next few weeks of camp and preseason that he's still got it. If he doesn't, the writing might already be on the wall for his long-term future in Atlanta. To make room for Taylor's return, the Falcons made a corresponding roster move, and it's a rough break for one young lineman. Second-year tackle Jack Nelson was waived with an injury designation, which means once he clears waivers, he's headed to injured reserve. This is a brutal blow for Nelson, whose entire summer was supposed to be about proving he belonged in this league with a big Year 2 leap. Instead, he'll be rehabbing on the sideline while other young linemen, names like Mike Jarrell and rookie 7th-round pick Ethan Onwanabe, who's reportedly been turning heads in practice, get the reps and the opportunity to pass him on the depth chart. Combine that with Atlanta's likely appetite for drafting tackle help again next spring, and Jack Nelson is suddenly looking at a serious uphill battle just to stick on this roster long-term. But that's not all. The Falcons also added depth at 2 other spots and cut a player at one very unglamorous, very underrated position to make it happen. On defense, Atlanta brought in defensive end Kem Sample. This is a name defensive-minded fans should get excited about. Sample is working his way back from an Achilles tear that derailed a breakout campaign, but he flashed real promise late last season, including a 2-sack performance in the finale against Cleveland. Rewind even further, and Sample was a name that turned heads against Atlanta back in a 2023 preseason matchup, a bigger, more powerful edge presence that fits exactly the mold this coaching staff seems to be building toward. And here's the real story hiding underneath this signing, with star linebacker Jalen Walker out for the season. There's a growing belief that the Falcons' defensive personnel is no longer built to run a traditional 3-man front. Adding bigger, heavier ends like Sample suggests, Atlanta may be quietly pivoting toward a 4-man front as their new defensive identity, a scheme shift that could reshape how this defense plays for the rest of the year. On offense, Atlanta also added running back depth in the form of Trey Sermon, a former third-round pick who's bounced around the league, now landing with his 5th team in 5 years. Sermon hasn't been able to stick as a lead back, and he hasn't carved out a role on special teams either, which has made him a tough fit as a true RB3 anywhere he's gone. So why bring him in now? The most likely explanation: the Falcons simply wanted more bodies at running back heading into their first preseason game, possibly signaling that stars like Bijan Robinson and Brian Robinson might see limited to 0 snaps in that contest. Head coach Kevin Stefanski has previously said he intended to play his starters in the preseason opener, but decisions on exactly who plays won't be finalized until midweek. If the ARB room really is just getting an extra body for depth purposes, don't be shocked if the big names sit this one out entirely. And finally, the move that might matter most, even though it's the one nobody wants to talk about. To clear room for these additions, the Falcons released their long snapper, Philip Lorenz. Yes, it sounds like a throwaway transaction, but long snappers are one of those quietly essential roles that can absolutely torpedo a season if things go wrong. A botched snap on a field goal or a punt has ended playoff dreams before. Consider that storyline shelved for now, but don't be surprised if long snapper questions creep back into the conversation before the season's over. So here's where the Falcons stand heading into these final crucial weeks of training camp. A front office that's already spent big money betting on unproven pieces. A right tackle trying to prove he still belongs. A young lineman whose season just got derailed. A defense that might be quietly shifting its entire scheme. A backfield stacking bodies ahead of preseason action. And hovering over every single storyline, a countdown clock ticking toward a franchise-altering quarterback draft class that might only come around once every several years. This is not a wait-and-see season for the Atlanta Falcons. This is a prove-it-right-now-or-blow-it-all-up season. Every practice rep, every preseason snap, every roster cut between now and Week 1 carries weight it wouldn't have carried a year ago. Kevin Stefanski, Kyle Pitts, Matthew Bergeron, Jawan Taylor, every single one of them is on the clock. And so, in many ways, is the entire front office that made the call to go all in before the results were in. The stakes have never been higher, the pressure has never been more real, and the margin for error has never been smaller. Atlanta, the countdown has officially started. If you want to stay ahead of every single roster move, every camp battle, and every twist in this wild Falcons season, make sure you hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Drop a comment below and let us know, do you think the Falcons make the playoffs this year, or are you already looking ahead to next year's quarterback class? And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is just getting started and you do not want to miss what happens next. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.